I got to thinking about it. There's been several years now that on a rental property that we have, we got one of the state record white ash trees sitting on it. And I've been praying for years that God would take that tree and knock it straight down through the middle of that house and destroy it so that I wouldn't have to fool with that anymore because of the stress of renting. It's terrible. Don't never do it. And just this last week, a tornado come through Black Mountain up there. And it took that tree and destroyed that tree, but there was only minimal damage to the house. I said, well, this is my last chance. I said, Lord, you didn't answer my prayers. I said, all you had to do was just lay that thing across it, and it'd be over with, but you didn't do it. You didn't do it. And you know, I began talking, the insurance adjuster, well, the lady, the secretary, I guess, for the insurance adjuster called me and said, began talking about it. And I said, yeah, I said, you really don't realize how amazing it is. I said, you know, this is one of the biggest white ash trees in the state of Georgia. I said, just the trunk of this thing is 20 or 30 foot across. I said, it's huge. And I said, that tornado took the trunk of that tree and laid it away from the house and took the limbs and laid those on the house. And now, too, one of these limbs has fell in the past, and my uncle took 4 trucks and trailer loads of wood off of one limb. That tells you how big it is. And you know, when I told her that, you know what her response was? She said, wow, that's God, ain't it? Boy, you talking about something that hit me like a ton of bricks. I was speechless. I said, yeah, it sure was, wasn't it? You know, I was looking for God to work in a physical way. I was looking for Him to answer my prayer in a physical way. But you know, so many times God wants to work in a greater way in your life. He wants to answer the prayer that you're wanting Him to answer in His way. His way's better than the way I had thought up of. And just because that tree's gone and out of the picture now, it doesn't mean that God hadn't answered my prayer. It doesn't mean that He hadn't done what He said He was going to do. You know what the problem is? The problem is I was just wanting to be a visitor instead of a dweller. If I had been dwelling in that secret place, guess what? I could have been abiding under His shadow. He could have already moved and answered in a great mighty way, but instead I was just a visitor. I'd just come to Him every once in a while when a renter moved out, when we didn't have the money to make a payment or something, and I'd call on Him in. But if I would have been dwelling in His presence with that situation, instead of just visiting every once in a while, God could have moved in a great and mighty way. But instead, I robbed myself of that blessing because I was looking on a physical thing instead of how great our God is. You know, you may be here this morning, you may be facing one of the hardest things you've ever had to face in your life. You've been coming to this altar, you've been praying, you've got to the point where you feel embarrassed because you think that God hadn't answered your prayer yet. You think that everybody in the church thinks that something's wrong with you just because you come to the altar so much. But let me tell you something this morning. You keep coming, you keep praying, you keep trusting God, because let me tell you something, He will come in a great and mighty way. Because let me tell you something I do know. This verse says that he that dwelleth shall abide in the shadow of the Almighty. Let me tell you something this morning. You'll never know His goodness. You'll never know the things that He's got in store for you until you first dwell in His presence. But let me tell you, you go to dwelling in His presence, there's things that's going to happen. Because let me tell you, when you start dwelling, there's some abiding that starts taking place. And let me tell you, once you get under the shadow of the Almighty, things don't seem important anymore. Your problems don't seem as bad as they used to be. Let me tell you, when God shows up, things begin to happen.